This is Conor, Neversink Farm. We're going to do a tour very soon of some of the winter production here, and then we're going to have a talk with Diego Footer. And before that, I wanted to give a little history of the course and kind of why we did it this way, and what it's about. But I chose doing the course for very specific reasons because, I was in the midst of starting a book. I got a request from a publishing company to do it. And somewhere in that time, Michael Kilpatrick approached me after he had visited the farm, and he was really excited about being able to record a lot of the systems here and the way we do things and put it into sort of this mini course. And it kind of grew from there. And the reason I really like the course format is because it's dynamic. It can be changed, reorganized, it's interactive with the members. And now that we have, so many members, I think we're approaching, close to 650, it makes it even better because we get more recommendations from people. They give us, they tell us how to make things better. Just a couple of days ago, one guy in the course was helping me redo one of the soil videos so that it was even has more clarity to it, which is really helpful. And that would be very difficult to do in a book form. And also doing conferences and stuff. I don't really like traveling without the family. It's not so much fun. And so that's why I chose to do it this way. And I really enjoy it. I like doing it. And it's gotten a lot bigger than, when we started. And now we're, the course covers every aspect of small market farming. It's not just a course about a handful of vegetables. It's, it goes into hoop house design, systems. It's even got flowers. Goes into all the herbs that we do and how to maintain them, and which ones to grow and market them, and the marketing, how to do market setup, as well as winter growing, because at Neversink we do a lot of winter growing. It's important to us. I really like doing it. We've been doing it since the beginning. So we've been doing it for many, many years. And so I'm gonna, flip this around so that we can, maybe take a look inside here. So you can see it where, we have a lot of snow. It's been, in the single digits, for the last week. The ground is completely frozen outside. You can see there's some arugula here. We do some big chard. And in the course, I go through each vegetable, why they became important, because we want to make sure everything's earning money. And sometimes things, even if you can grow them in the winter, it doesn't mean you should. Sometimes they just don't make money. And so we have, how much they should earn per square foot, and how popular they are, and different ways to sell them. Here in the back, we're looking at some dandelion greens, and we do that on a cut and come again. You can see they're already popping up and coming through again. We try to put those all along the edges, so we actually use all of the space. Right here, we're looking at some cress, which is very popular. Carrots over here. And this is in a house that we keep just above freezing, because you can see there's a washing station here as well. And in a moment, I'm going to leave this house and we'll go to one of the houses that has no heat whatsoever. And we're harvesting tons of stuff out of it. So we're really filling our markets. But before I go there, I'm going to talk with Diego for a little bit. Right, so we have Diego with us from Permaculture Voices, and we're going to talk a little bit about our markets, A little of the history of why the history of how we maximize our profits and things like that. So Diego,
Yep.
are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. So thanks for having me on again today, Connor. One thing I wanted to start on and really talk about today is just selling product, because I see that as one of the main things that's going to make a farm succeed. Growing, it's one thing, but if you can't sell it, that's another thing. And I think, from a lot of the chatter I hear out there, people look at what you're doing and they think a lot of your success goes towards selling in the New York City market, which generates a really high premium on some of the product that you're selling. And there's people in Ohio, Arizona, Florida, Tennessee that want to do this. And I think they get discouraged thinking, I don't have a New York City market like Conor does, so I can't do what he does in terms of sales on my farm. Can you talk about the reality of your market and how that actually translates?
Yeah. Well, we're in a weird position because I think according to the numbers, most farms are within at least an hour, if not 2 hours, of a major city, which we're not. We're about 2.5 hours from New York City, so it's extremely far. So the first time we ever did a New York City market was this year, and it might not have been the best idea, but we didn't really do New York City markets before because it was so far. It ends up being that's a 5-hour round trip, and then with traffic and setup, you're looking at about 8 hours, and then you have a 9-10 hour market. So between 17 and 19-hour day. And so what we can earn locally or closer to the farm is actually better per hour. And the prices in New York City, I think, it's not like they're that great, because most markets in the city, at least the bigger ones, it's a lot of wholesale. It's not just customers coming to visit, it's restaurants. And so you're expected to give a wholesale price, selling things by the case. And if you're small, that's a little hard. So it's not like it's really a great market in New York City. I don't know how it is in other cities, but yeah, it's not, there's a lot of competition. So
Is that the
really
main
not
market
central.
is that the main market that you do, that New York City market, or are you doing several markets?
We do another market. We do one south of us. That's a more major market for us, along with some restaurants. For restaurant, it's not about prices. It's about moving things without having to go to a market. New York was replaced another market that we were doing, and it doesn't do much better, but we did it just for quality of life compared to the other market. But New York will take a lot of investment of time. If you want to do really well in New York City, it'll take many years. It's not a market you can become the big player in quickly. Sometimes it's better to be a big fish in a small pond than hitting New York City with as a small little farm. At least that's what we found.
Well,
But
how have you made that work? Because I think in one of the podcasts we did, you mentioned some of these booths in New York City might take up 10 stalls. So you have 100 feet of booth space. You're a tiny farm in terms of land base going into New York City. How do you carve out, a niche in that pond when every other farmer is big, they're wholesaling, they're maybe aggregating product? How do you even get in there to compete, let alone do well?
Well, in smaller markets, we try to be as big as we can. But in New York City, that's just not going to work. I mean, they're huge farms. They take up a lot of real estate in the market. And they sort of own that real estate. It's not really up to the market. The people who have been there a long time, they own it, and it's not going to change much. So what we do in smaller markets is try to look big, but what we also do is we try to grow things off season, like this winter growing that we do, because you can't get a good price for tomatoes in August. You're never going to be able to sell things for more than the going rate. That's just not going to happen. At least it doesn't happen for us. And the only way to get a better price is to grow it where nobody has it. And in New York, we have a lot of opportunity to do that. It's a little expensive to do it in New York because it gets so cold and you need structures to do it. But always standing out and doing things that the big farms can't do. Because these huge, gigantic farms in New York City, they're not interested in putting up a 3,000 square foot house and growing carrots in it to get it early. It's just, they're harvesting things with a tractor. So it doesn't make sense for them. They're not interested in doing it. So I'm trying to fill those niches. It's one of the many things we do to try to earn money on a small farm, which is find every little crack we can. That's something they don't do. Like we grow potatoes inside very early because they're not interested in doing that. And so that's what we try to do in New York City. But since, this is our first year in it, it takes a little while for people to get to know it. We have some chefs who really like us because the stuff looks great. But it takes a little while. It's a big lake. It's not a little pond. It's gigantic. And, standing out takes more time. It takes less time in a smaller market.
Can you walk through a year of carrot prices and talk about how they seasonally vary, or pick a crop? Tomatoes, if carrots aren't a good example, if you're selling them in January, what are you selling them for a bunch? And how might that contrast to when big farms come online in June, July, August?
I think carrots is a good example because carrots, we decided long ago to really focus on what we thought were like, the top 10 popular items and try to have them as close to year round as we could. The carrots are extremely popular, but, we sell them for the price everybody else does. It's, $3.50 a bunch. And, the main season when everybody has them, that's really not, you can't ask for much more. You'll end up going home with them. But the price increases the deeper you go into winter. So for fresh carrots, we had a market yesterday. We can get as much as 5 for a bunch, but that's in December in New York when there are no other fresh carrots at all. Even if other vendors bring them, it's usually a very limited amount, right? They're not bringing 10 totes of it. In the middle of the summer when carrots are just going crazy, it's not about how much you sell them for, it's how many you can sell. So if we sell them for $3.50 a bunch, depending on the size of the bunch, you go bigger bunch sometimes. If you have a lot of them, we'll sell it for $4, or sell it for $4, but then do a special 3 for $9 or 3 for $10, and just try to move as much as we can, and we'll sell 10 totes worth. But in the winter, we sell the carrots for more and then bring less. We might only bring 3 totes, but we can charge 5. The highest price is going to be somewhere in February. So if we have fresh carrots in February, we try to do it every winter, then you can start moving up to 6. At least we can in our market. But that's because in February in New York State, when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground and it's minus 10 degrees, there are no fresh carrots to be had. So there's people who would be willing to get them. And they're the best tasting carrots of the year. They're just unbelievable. So all you have to do is give someone a taste of it, and then they're like, yeah, I'm willing to spend a little bit more money for these awesome carrots in February. And then as you move through spring, as more carrots enter the market, the price comes down again, and then you go back into modes of selling as much as you can. But I don't want to be, we, from the first year, we didn't want to rely on having to be, have to sell so much stuff just in July and August to make a living, because we're just not going to be able to compete against tractor farms. Sure, we sell as much as we can and do specials and try to get rid of as much produce as we can, but it would never carry us. We need the off-season stuff to continue to earn the amount of money we want. Now, if we were just thinking about July and August, then we just have to get bigger. We'd have to get a tractor and all the rest of it. That would be a tractor farm, and we'd be doing things in bulk during normal times of the year and just selling a lot of it, right? And so we're just doing something different, you know, and if we're going to do something different and be small, then we've got to find those niches. And carrots is a great example because, you know, the big farms are really, even if they, you know, they'll grow some greens early, you know, even a few places will grow some tomatoes early, but carrots, not so much. I mean, they see it as a waste. And when we do the tour, I'll take you to the carrot house, our spring carrot house, and you'll see what I'm talking about on kind of the level of that we do with something like carrots to get them really early and get a good price for.
So your other market, your non-New York City market, you know, carrots probably follow that same pattern there, but let's talk another crop that, you know, cash flows a lot of farms, greens. Can you talk about the prices that you're getting for, say, just salad mix at the non-New York City market and how you've been able to find a niche with that in terms of seasonality?
Yeah, we're not a salad farm. You know, salad is a great way to get good money per square foot, but it's incredibly labor intensive. So we do a lot of greens, as you can see back here in the winter, when we have more time, because we're not harvesting tomatoes and cucumbers and the rest of it. But we're not just focused on lettuce. So we had to get really clever in the different produce that we have, like those carrots. But salad, we still grow year round. We're bringing lettuce heads to the market yesterday. We were bringing lettuce mix to the market yesterday. And in the winter, the prices are better. You know, in the dead heat of the summer, when everyone's got lettuce, you know, you're looking at, in New York, $10 a pound. Then wholesale, you're going to be under $9, maybe $8.50 for lettuce, you know. And that seems like a high number, but when you figure in labor, it's not so great. So you have to be really, really efficient with it. And if you're just doing lettuce, then you become even more and more efficient at it. I would lose interest too quick if I was just doing lettuce. But we do a lot of it in the winter, and then as the spring approaches, we go down. And you know, the course, you know, when we talk about propagation, you know, go into detail about why we go down on greens, when it starts happening, what we start replacing it with, because the competition in the spring for greens just becomes enormous. But I find that the demand goes down because people are looking for something not better, but they want bigger stuff. They want tomatoes and cucumbers and other things that they think should be there because the sun is out, right? They don't care that it takes a while to grow. The sun is out, and they want something a little bit more than greens that they've been eating all winter. And so that's when the price starts dropping again. But in the middle of the winter, if we do like a salad bar, you know, we can get maybe 16, maybe a little bit more, all depending on what we have in the competition, when there's nothing around.
And a lot of that.
I was thinking we should go do a tour of the carrot house since we talked about it. Yeah, but can you ask me the question? I'll answer it on the way, but I want to take people over there and take a look.
I was just going to go into the infrastructure side. I mean, the pricing's one thing, but you have to be able to have the product this time of year and in these niche seasons to make it happen. So a lot of what's made your farm able to take advantage of this off-season pricing is having the in-the-field systems to grow it this time of year and having the physical infrastructure to make sure that you can deliver lettuce in mid-December.
Yeah, our first, you know, we invested $30K when we started the farm. And one of it was a little hoop house. And that's when we started winter growing. And then we just started adding some more hoop houses as we went along. And yeah, you have to have the infrastructure in New York. But yeah, I'm outside the carrot house. So you can see this is a pretty big house. There's nothing but carrots in here. It's all undercover. They're already germinated. I get them germinated early, well, early in the winter. So underneath, it may be hard to see, but they're, you know, they're all germinated, right? You can see them coming up. So that in the spring, they're going to start growing like crazy. And this whole place is filled with carrots. And we can harvest these up until we have them in the field. But you can see how much we go into carrot production. But it does require infrastructure. We have to have houses, right? That house is completely unheated. There's no heat in it. And here we have H2. You can see this one's completely unheated as well. And this one is full of greens. Right, so I got spinach under here, you can see. It's the row next to it, we just harvested, right? It's a lot of spinach, a lot of tatsoi in here. There's a bunch of other stuff. All of it completely freezes at night. So it's infrastructure and know-how as well. And that takes a while to get dialed in for your area. Because you can't heat everything. That's gonna, it's gonna cost too much money.
You know, if you look at, say, that carrot house, for example, can you talk about the economics of that? Dedicating a whole house like that to carrots. How does that work in terms of the carrots you'll pull out versus the cost to go into that piece of infrastructure?
Well, because these are early carrots, you get good money for them. And as we're pulling them out, we're replanting, right? And that's the great thing about being no-till, no BCS, no tractor. We can just go ahead and start planting again. So it's never not producing that house, right? It gets immediately planted. But, I wouldn't grow just a whole house of carrots if I only had 2 houses. But because we're a market farm and we're growing for market, we need to have a diversity of products. I can't just keep shoving lettuce down people's throats. It's never going to work. It's another reason we're not a lettuce farm. Because then you need specific customers who are just buying lettuce. So I'm trying to be really diverse and add other things to the table. And that's one reason it is financially viable, because it's a cross-sell on the greens in the winter and early spring.
You know, if you're a small farm, you put in a high tunnel like that, how do you think you start to prioritize what gets to use that real estate first? Do you go with those premium crops that if you can push them into the early spring, like the tomatoes and cucumbers, you'll get a higher premium versus trying to dump them onto the market later in the summer? Or how do you evaluate, if you only have 1 or 2 high tunnels, what am I going to put in this space?
Well, you start with the most profitable and the most popular. And that's going to be, lettuce, spinach. Spinach is the easiest to grow. It's easy to sell. And that's what we started with, was like a salad mix and a spinach. And then you have to wait until you have more infrastructure to start adding more. Because we only started adding stuff if we're selling all the spinach. Otherwise we'd add more spinach before we add something else. Like the big chart that we have, spinach would come first. It's more profitable. But once we've filled that, we've seen the depth of the market and filled it, then we move on to the next crop. And that's something, we go through, the whole winter crop module in the course where we go from crop to crop to crop and talk about their popularity. When did we start? When did we start growing them to scale so that we had a lot of it, right? The order in which we chose it. So, spinach first, and then you want to make sure you have lettuce, and then you want to make sure you have something else. And you might wait a while before you start growing radishes in the winter, which we do grow, and that'll be the next house we go into. We grow them in the path.
What about your tomatoes? That's a crop you said when the sun comes out in April, people think the sun's out, should have tomatoes, they should have cucumbers. What type of prices are you getting that time of year for those crops versus if you were trying to sell them in the middle of summer when everybody else has them?
Tomatoes?
Tomatoes, cucumbers, in April versus trying to sell them in July.
Well, tomatoes, everybody loves them. So early tomatoes, it depends on how early, but we can get our first ones in April. We don't have a lot in April, but April, May, then your heirlooms, we can sell at about $6 a pound. And then once you head towards August, you pretty much can't even sell them anymore. The market's so choking with them. And that's the reason we started growing early tomatoes, because we had tons of tomatoes. And then, you have to sell them for $1.50 a pound, $2 a pound, and it's not even worth growing them anymore. But the first ones that hit the market for us will be at about $6 a pound for the heirlooms. For beefsteaks, it's less. So we don't grow early beefsteaks anymore. We try to really maximize the money, right? Even though you're getting less production off the heirlooms, it still takes just as much time to harvest one heirloom as it does a beefsteak. So we save the beefsteaks for a little bit later in the season.
Yeah, so really, it all comes back to one phrase you told me on the podcast I really liked is you don't want to be the person who's selling somebody a crop when they're sick of it. You want to be the farmer who makes them sick of the crop, so when everybody else is selling it to them, they're sick of what you've already sold them.
Yeah, and it's also what I call the tractor farms, but that's probably not fair. But the large-scale farms that are going to come later, I need to get out ahead. If I wasn't able to get out ahead, it'd be difficult. I think everybody who's gone to a market in August and tries to sell tomatoes, this is in New York, you know what month it is where you are. It's hard. The prices are dropping, and it's just a race to the bottom. And I don't like being there. I like to take my tomatoes down and start putting in the winter crop. I try to get out ahead. I don't want to be selling what everybody has. I want to be growing what everybody wants later.
Yeah, so if I step back and think about this from a macro standpoint, it's really a lot of just observing your market and thinking about things. If I'm having trouble selling ABC crop at a certain time of year, could I sell that crop later or earlier? And if I sell it then, am I facing less competition, which means I can push a higher price? And I think that's a lot of how you've looked at this.
Yeah, and it's survival. You can't, there's no way I could survive as a farm in July and August at this scale. I have to get bigger. That's the reality of it. I'd have to start using a tractor to on a bigger scale if I wanted to earn the kind of living that I want to earn. That's just the way it is, I think we should step into the lettuce house so we can go take a look at that. And I also wanted to talk about that. If there's anybody out there who's a member already, who's listening to this, I don't know why I was sitting on my desk doing the Q&As, which is really silly. So from now on, at least after the next one, which we already scheduled, we're going to do all the Q&As at the farm, walking around, looking at stuff. It's so much better, obviously, right? And this way I can answer the questions better during those webinars by walking over to whatever you're asking about or showing an example. So that's a big change in the course now, is that webinars will now be at the farm. So this is mostly lettuce. And in the past, you know, we grow some radishes. Those are really nice for the holidays, right? These are French breakfast down here where my foot is. And those sell really well. We have some big chard that we grow on the side. And there's a whole reason why I grow them on the sides, why we grow lettuce in the middle. It's all about planning for the spring and what's going to happen when we move into the spring. Now, there's another house. You know, we've really grown what we've been doing in the winter. You know, we've been doing it many seasons. And I know this is sort of something that you don't see in other courses like this, but it's definitely a specialty of ours. Growing off season, growing high-tech tomatoes, high-tech cucumbers. Right here, we're looking at here we'll look at this one. Right, this is all kale. Right, kale loves to be cold. It doesn't matter. You see the snow up along the side. And the kale is very, very happy, and it's huge. Right, I think you can. I'll turn it around so you can see the size of it in the winter. You can see, but it is up to my waist. You see? That's how big it is.
You know, on a crop like kale, where, you know, other farms might have that in the winter, how do you find selling that this time of year? It's a favorite for seasonality.
Well, up here in New York, kale's only going to last at the market until about December. As you get into January and February, the big farms don't really have it anymore. It just gets too cold. So it does work for us, but it all depends on your market and whether it exists or not. The other thing is, winter growing is all about being prepared for the spring as well, because that's when this stuff's going to grow quick, and you're going to be way ahead of the competitors, because that kale's going to be there through February, March, April, and it's going to last until we get kale from the field. So we're never without it. You know, we're not a big kale producer during the summer. I don't really like to grow it as much. We have it, but not in large quantities. We actually grow more in the winter because it is profitable, because it loves to grow quickly in the winter. So it comes back really, really fast. You know, I was in there, probably didn't even look like we harvested, but we've been harvesting in there for, I think, 6 weeks now for markets.
Now, here's a question or comment that comes out of the Facebook group. There's, you know, certain seasonality preferences that customers have when it comes to crops. They like root veg in the winter, they like kale in the winter, but, you know, somebody in there saying, you know, they have trouble selling lettuce in the winter because people are favoring other crops. Is the solution to that just kind of what you alluded to earlier? You're selling it, but just not bringing as much of it to the market?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that trouble. I mean, root crops in the winter, it's just the market is choking on them. So I don't find that people prefer root crops in the winter. I think people prefer fresh in the winter. They want fresh greens in the winter, at least in New York. You know, the tables are all covered with storage stuff, right? All winter long, the big farms have storage carriers, but they don't compare to fresh. And that's what I think people are looking for. They're looking for fresh. And look, sometimes it's not about, and this goes back to our marketing, which is why we have a whole module just on marketing, how to sell crops, how to sell each one of them. Because sometimes it's not about the crop. Sometimes it's about how you sell it. You know, there's a lot of, and we've learned this because when we've adapted the way we sell things, I mean, sometimes we can sell 5 totes of it, and right across from us, there'll be a farmer who hasn't sold a single one. And we all got the same price, and he might even have a better quality. But sometimes it's just about how you sell it, market it. Sometimes it's not about giving up on it. It's about doing it differently.
You know, is that, you know, bundling? Is it making it appear cleaner and more vibrant than other competitors? You know, like let's go back to the carrots. Do you think your carrots stand out visually compared to the other vendors that are selling carrots at the markets that you're selling at?
Well, they do in the middle of winter when no one has them, for sure.
Right.
But it's all of the above. You know, there isn't one way to do it. And that's why it takes a long time to explain, to go through all the different ways that marketing is done, right? Look, you know, the Gap does it, right? They know they have to sell the pants a certain way. They'll try this way. They'll try that way. They'll display it differently. And same thing at a market. It's amazing when, you know, when we make a subtle change and the difference in sales, big. And it could be any one of the things you mentioned, plus a whole lot more on how to make sure. And sometimes it's experimentation. Sometimes I can explain why. Other times I just know it works because we've tried it and it works, and I can't really even explain why someone is attracted to it in a different form. Whether it's loose or whether it's bagged or whether it's bunched. Or sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can explain it by, well, people like the way it looks in a grocery store. Other times I can't really explain it. But we've tried so many things and really narrowed down the different options for different vegetables and how to market them.
You know, a lot of this you arrive at over time, how to sell it, when to sell it. For somebody who's a first-year farmer getting into this, do you think you try and just grow crops when they grow best their first year, get the growing down, start building a market base, start getting a feel for it, and then look to optimize seasonality going into your second year? Because for me, I mean, to try and think of how to take advantage of these seasonal niches your very first year might be tough. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends who you are. If it's me, I just jump right into it. I don't think there's any question that tomatoes are popular, that lettuce heads are popular, that carrots are popular. I don't think you need a marketing team to figure that out for you. And so the earlier you start working on it, the better, right? Unless you've got, you know, 20 years to get your shit together, maybe it's better to start early and start working on it. That's what we did. You know, we just said, you know what? Let's just grow tomatoes inside and we'll learn. You know, I didn't have as many resources when we started. You know, there wasn't a lot of places to find the equipment and what to use and how to do it. There's more of that now, just educational resources. So I think jumping in, especially when you know it's something popular, when you're small, you got to be nimble as a market farm. So I would, for me, I would jump in and do it.
You know, and here's one coming out of Facebook too. For somebody looking to start this as a second career, how would you approach that? Do you go in full time? Do you start this on the side? What advice do you have for brand new farmers?
You know, that's a real personal thing, and you know, that's up to them and what their situation is. I can say what I do, and I don't like a plan B. Right? So when we started the farm, there was no plan B. There was no other job. It was, we're going to make this work. Because I find the plan B always becomes the plan A, because the job is easier, right? You know, you get a paycheck every week, right? Maybe it has health insurance. It's safe. So that's the one that's going to end up paying the bills and becomes very hard to get rid of. But it's a personal decision. I couldn't in any way give someone advice on what they should do. I just know for me, I need to go without that safety because now I know I have to put everything into the business I'm creating, right? That's really what you're doing is you're starting a business and then growing it.
You know, and looking up at you, here's a question from the Facebook group. There's snow on top of those tunnels there. I know your winter market is indoors, but what do you do when you have an outdoor market and you have a bad weather day? It's cold, it's rainy. Is that just go with the flow? Are you just going to have to kind of factor in a certain number of those days a year? Because that's probably not going to bring as many customers through the market booth. And what would you do in that scenario if you're having a string of bad weather and market sales slow down?
Well, we do have a market that's outdoors, and it's the risk of being a market farmer is there are bad days. No, there's not much you can do about it, but you have to show up, you have to do it, and let your customers know that you're reliable. So that's just the risk of this type of business. It's great to have some wholesale customers that maybe you can pick up some stuff if you don't sell it. And we used to do that a lot. You know, we worked that out for a few years that we were able to do that. Sorry, I'm just making sure good.
You know, along the lines of wholesale customers, in the past, I think we were talking offline, you've had up to 40% of your sales be wholesale. Last year, they were down to 20%. Was there an intentional move to go more towards farmers markets? And if so, why?
You know, it's not so intentional. It's just, you know, there's logistics involved in everything. And sometimes it's a quality of life decision. We're just spending too much time on one revenue stream. It could just be a shifting market. The goal is really to try to sell everything. And sometimes I don't care about the revenue stream, and sometimes I do. So it's not an easy answer. We've made the decision based on different things at different times.
You know, can you give a quick pros and cons of, say, a wholesale customer versus selling at the farmer's market? I mean, beyond the obvious wholesale, you can move a bunch of stuff. One sale, it's gone. You know, if we just focus on that side, what do you like about wholesale and what don't you like?
Well, that's exactly what I like about wholesale is I put it in a box and it leaves. And I don't have to spend all day standing around at a farmer's market. But the downside of wholesale is you can't sell them what you want, right? They're going to buy what they want, right? You can leave stuff off the list if you know, but if they're looking for A and B, that's what they're going to buy. Farmers markets are different because people are going to buy what you have. As long as you have popular stuff, you know, once you sell out of tomatoes, they'll start buying something else you have on the table. You know, they're there shopping, they want to buy stuff, so they're going to buy what you have. Restaurants or wholesale, not so true. You can't say, look, restaurant A bought all of the carrots, you want tomatoes instead of the carrots you ordered. It's not really a substitution thing, you know. They don't really substitute one for the other. So it's very hard to sell everything that way. It's easier to sell, you know, it might be easier to sell overflow because you have a limited list, but I think that's the one downfall to wholesale.
You know, one thing that comes up a lot when you hear these numbers is these are sales numbers, and people are always like, well, what's the net? What's the net? I think in my experience from talking to a lot of farmers, you know, once infrastructure is on the ground, most vegetables probably have a 50% profit margin in them at the end of the day. Is there a certain profit margin that you shoot for on a crop to say, this is profitable enough to make it worthwhile, or it's not?
No. I want them to have, you know, a 50, 60, 70% margin. But sometimes it's not just about margin. Sometimes it's about less work. Sometimes you leave something in the ground for a long time and it gives you a rest that you're not dealing with it all season. So no, I don't have a particular one. It's sort of a mix. It's a little bit more complicated than that because a multi-vegetable farm. Um, you know, it's like lettuce mix, right? Lettuce mix is really popular per square foot, but I can't just replace everything with lettuce mix because not only is it not interesting for me, but my mix of product it wouldn't be that appealing. So some things are there to be appealing, but they all must be profitable. That doesn't matter. They got to be profitable. And I have a way of doing that that's very simple, which I do once a week, once a month, and check on its profitability. I do that without, you know, lengthy spreadsheets and stuff because I kind of need to. I kind of need to know what it's doing. Right.
Do you think on this scale, most crops are inherently profitable when you grow them well? I mean, if you take away from the things that just take up massive amounts of room, like melons that we've talked about before, but any of these more dense crops that you can grow in a bed, unless labor's chewing you up, I find it hard not to make money on them. Obviously, as long as you can sell them.
Yeah, as long as you can sell them and that you do them efficiently, right? You know, if you're doing them well, weed-free, you know, they're growing to size, you know, in the rate that they should be, that they're even growth. Yeah, but you know, it's a delicate dance, and it's something where you want to be removing variables along the way to make sure all of that's happening. You know.
Well, I like the point you made. It's not all about, you know, just the dollars and cents here. It's about field space. It's about getting time off. There's a lot of things that go into that. If you look at your farm, it's a little bit atypical for a farmer's market farm to grow as many crops as you do. You know, you're not a CSA farm. Do you think you could refine down the crops you grow more? Or would you face that problem that you've alluded to a few times? People would just get sick of seeing the same stuff if you only brought the same 8 crops to market versus having 20.
We just have to find a different revenue stream to do it. Like if you want to be just a baby green farm, you know, spinach, arugula, lettuce, it would just be a different market. You might go retail or something. So it can be done. I like being a little bit varied. And we found ways to maximize profit that way because we're looking to fill in every little place we can. So we might not grow a lot of that crop, but we make sure that it's all sold, right? I don't want to have a whole bunch of it. So it all can be profitable, but yeah, I mean, if you want to grow just tomatoes, it's it's certainly can be profitable, but you're in a different market. You know, your revenue is going to be different. Your customers will be different. You know, we do it based because I like the revenue streams that we do have, and I like being a little bit diversified. I mean, I don't want to grow purple carrots, but I don't want to stop growing carrots and grow just greens.
I mean, is that kind of the thought behind growing crops like ginger and turmeric that you see a lot of small farms grow? I think you've grown that in the past. Is it just gives something different to the market stand? You know, it's kind of eye-catching.
Yeah, but it also gives a rest, right? It's staying in the ground a long time. You don't have to do anything. It's just sort of all at once near the end of the season. You just kind of harvest it and sell it. So it's just like, you know, if you take an extreme example and you're growing just baby greens, I mean, all you're doing is harvesting, turning over, planting, harvesting, turning over, planting, harvesting, turning over, planting, on and on and on again. And, you know, just like in a restaurant, right? A chef even if they're cooking everything to order, they always have a few things on the menu that they're just heating up. It may be a pickled dish, or it may be a soup they've already made that they're heating up, just to give them a damn rest. You know, who wants to be cooking every plate to order? And on the farm, it's the same thing. I just like things that just give us a little bit of a rest. And those things are good that way. I wouldn't fill my farm with them, but I like that we have a little bit of rest. There's no maintenance, especially during the peak, you know, July and August, when we're doing a lot of harvesting.
You know, could you justify on your farm scale growing a crop like, say, sweet potatoes or a whole bunch of onion or a whole bunch of garlic that you could park in a root cellar for a long time, or storage radishes that would push you beyond the 1.5 acres that you could dedicate a few beds to them, or some blocks to them, because they do kind of have that function of let them grow and then harvest all at once, and then you can kind of dole it out?
You know, it's not an easy question to answer, because sweet potatoes, I think, are going to require a tractor to do it efficiently. And I have no interest in becoming a tractor farm, so I wouldn't do it. You know, there are farms that do them in hoop houses, and you can become really good at it and make it profitable. I think you can make anything profitable if you get good at it, make sure it's off season. But I want to avoid things that require heavy machinery. I like the scale I'm at. I don't want to push around the BCS. I've done it. I like things that are light, easy, maneuverable. So I kind of stay away from that. I want to talk about a little about what we've, for preview members, people who are in, who have already have a preview and have a login to that. Yesterday, we just added a whole bunch of content, all, you know, some short lessons, some longer lessons from within the course. I don't know, Carson, you there? Remember how many we added?
I think we added 12.
So 12 new pieces of content that are there, because we're you know, this launch is ending tomorrow. I think tomorrow in the evening in New York. So we're just throwing a bit of content out there so you can take a look at it, because we're moving on from this. And we wanted to give you an idea of all the great stuff we have in the course, and kind of the diversity of stuff that we have, which is really unique. It's just the incredible amount of diversity. And because we are, you know, a diverse farm, right? We're not growing just a handful of crops, but we do a lot of high-tech crops, and we do a lot of lower tech, and a lot of herbs. We also do flowers for the table, because we're always trying to fill in those little crevices into the market, right? Because there's only, as we were talking about, there's only so many tomatoes you can sell, but the person who buys tomatoes might buy a bunch of flowers. Maybe they'll buy some herbs. Maybe, you know, they'll buy something else. And so that's really what we do, is try to fill in those, any gaps we can.
I know this might vary from person to person, but is there anything within the course that you think, if you watch this section, if you go through this section, it can make a big impact financially on the farm that you're starting or the farm that you already run today?
Sections in the course?
Yeah.
Well, every section relates to profit, right? It's not like an experimental farm. It's not a nonprofit, and we've always focused on trying to maximize what we do, whether it's with equipment or efficiency. So everything's sort of about that. But the course runs in a linear fashion. It's not we're not just selling, you know, I think it's well over 40 hours of content. We're in a course that we do in a linear fashion so that people can ask questions, so that we can have a lively Q&R live regularly and an active forum. And so that's the way I want to do it. And we're going to continue with that format. And so in the beginning, we lay down the groundwork. You know, we lay down sort of the introduction to kind of how we operate, and then we apply that as we move forward. So I think we have very simple, elegant methods that we use. You know, I always think that if it takes a long time to explain a method, it's probably not worth much. The longer it takes to explain it, I think the less it's useful. So ours are much easier to explain because I need to explain them to staff. I need to use them. I need to make them useful. And so we move from that, and that can be, you know, quite beneficial to a farm if they don't have a way of doing that already that isn't simple. And then moving into some of the productions that we do, like how we do tomatoes early or winter growing, all of that is profitable. Herbs are profitable. So I don't think there's anything that's not about profit. Well, not everything may be new to everybody, you know. I guarantee that there's some things that are new to most. You know, it's rare course in that it touches on every aspect of the farm, from loading for market, display, winter growing, hoop house design, tons of vegetables, going through all the winter vegetables, different herbs, all of that, propagation house design, how we propagate, planting, seeding, and all the regular stuff. I think it's all useful. If I didn't think it was useful, I wouldn't have put it in there. So we think all of it is good.
And this is really the distillation of where you're at in your farm career, like everything that it's taken for you to get here. You know, I was kind of talking to you about this yesterday. People see, I think, what you're doing now on Instagram and other places, and they think, look what he's doing. He just arrived there. But there's been a lot of years of grinding it out, trying stuff, failure, stuff that didn't work to get here. You didn't just show up, have a market that could buy all this product at some premium price, which you don't have. You're commuting far, you're selling at prices that other people are. And this is how you've made it happen.
Yeah. You know, me and my wife were just talking about it this morning, you know, that not only did we work our asses off for everything that's here, you know, that we had to like go beyond that and reach out and take the things we want, you know, to not raise our hand and ask, but to try to get to the further line. And, you know, whether it's when we're talking to a chef or trying to get into a market, or when we need to jump ahead with some technology at the farm, that we need to dive in and not just wait for things to happen. So it's you know, there was nothing here when we started.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a derelict place, and it's hard work. There's no easy answer for it. You know, that's why, you know, the course is there, because it's hundreds of things that need to be done to increase one's success. There's no magic to it. There's nothing. There's no magic pill. There's no one piece of equipment. Nothing. It all comes down to hard work. And sure, there's a lot of ways to do things, and I do things my way. But I think knowing how all the hundreds of different things, there's so many things that can be applied on one farm from that.
And it's a continuous refinement too, right? Like, I know your New York City market, you're kind of thinking, well, maybe this isn't the best move to go into here. You know, how do you look at a market like that you're already in and try and improve it, turn up the dial? Is there something you're going to do, say, going into 2018 to make that more efficient in terms of your time usage and the sales you're pulling out of that market? Is there anything that you can do?
Well, we joined this market very late in the season, so we haven't been there for many months. So we want to see what happens in the spring because, you know, our strength is really in winter and early season growing. You know, it's not in July and August. So we want to see what happens with that before we make any major changes. But, you know, farming is dynamic. And that's, as I said earlier, is why I love the course dynamic, is because it's dynamic. We can change it. We can take suggestions and make things clearer or add new technology as we use them. You know, I saw someone in the forum today was talking about this sort of Wi-Fi irrigation thing. And it's fascinating. So I'm actually thinking about getting one and trying it out and using it. But, you know, that I have the time for that. You know, this isn't a course that I just packaged up, you know, and then, you know, I'll visit it once in a while and see how it's going. I'm involved. I'm there. I want to know what's going on, and I want to change it and add to it and make it relevant all the time.
Conor, talk about people ask you how many years you've been farming or how many seasons have you been farming. And I think you always rephrase it as how many successions have you done farming? And that's more important because what you're doing is at the end of a succession, you're readjusting. How that affects your workflow and how you're, you know, how you've navigated the last decade of your life by taking things in small increments and adjusting it every single time you put a seed in the ground.
Yeah, well, the farm was started, you know, the current incarnation of Neversink farm was started 7 years ago. But we've been farming year round, right? You know, winter growing and off-season farming isn't something new to us. So, you know, we've been growing. We don't stop farming in the winter. So it feels like 14 years. Plus, we started at our homestead for a few years before that. Doing, you know, what we would call homesteading, and kind of learning from that. And so it's been a long time, and we've got, you know, I think just walking around the farm, you can see we've gotten very good at it, very profitable at it, and we needed to learn fast. You know, I think if I had gotten into it many years ago, I think I would have taken my time. Right? I think I would have gone on vacation during the winter, relaxed, because I didn't really care about, you know, earning too much money, you know, when I was younger. But yeah, I have kids, you know, I got to think about them. I've got to think a little bit about the future. And that's why I put so much energy into the farm and continue to. We don't stop. We are always interested in improving the farm and working at it, working hard at it. You know, I may not want to work 70 hours a week like we did at the beginning, but you can't. You can't. You're just going to burn out.
You know, here's a question right out of Facebook related to that. How do you balance the rest of life? You know, you have kids, you have a family, there's personal interests, things you want to pursue. How much time do you take off during the year? And let's boil that down to much time do you take off during the week? We've talked about this before, but you're not a farmer working 80 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. You have a lot of rest built in, and it's due to a lot of the systems that you have on your farm. So can you talk about how you've managed to balance life and workload?
Well, the better we get, the more efficient we get, the less time we need to spend on it. And that's the result of just being better at it, not doing things twice, doing things right the first time, and simplifying systems. You know, I like really simple things, easy to explain, easy to do. I don't want to, you know, refer to a spreadsheet every time I need to do something. And that saves time. All of these little things just added up and saving time on my farm. And instead of expanding, we just decided to make a regular work week where we can take 2 days off. And in the winter, it's more than that. But sometimes it's just, it's based on the market. We may get unlucky one year and we have a market in the middle of the week. But we always try to take 3 days off in the winter, 2 days off in the summer, at least in the past couple of years. Try to do a couple of 1 or 2 weeks off at some point, which is even harder because, you don't want to be missing markets and seem unreliable. But we've been trying to do that, get out a bit more.
Okay. Yeah. Here's another one. In this, you can use the video to illustrate this. Can you just show people within that tunnel, what's the width of that tunnel? What's the length of that tunnel? And what are you doing around the edges to keep voles and other pests from coming in and getting some of your winter crops?
Okay, I'll walk it. Hold on. So our houses are, well, you can see along the edges, we continue to grow. Like I'll even plant a crop along the edge. But we bury our edges, and I don't have the pictures here, but in the course we go into really great detail with pictures and everything of how we design these knee walls. They're not standard, but they really help prevent voles or cold intrusion. So I know some people have high tunnels, they can't grow on the edges because they freeze. But we find when we do them this way that we get even temperature from one side to the other so that the things along the side don't freeze. It's hard to explain without a lot of pictures of how we build them. But it's very, very important that it's built well and it's built to be low management, because that's the best way to earn a lot of money per square foot is in really, really well done houses. And that's why I take a lot of time in the course to go over all the ways that I design it so that it is trouble-free, that there's very little management, very little to do, and the production can be extremely high. We started with caterpillar tunnels, which are great when you're starting out, and then just move better and better and better and improve upon them over time based on what works and what doesn't work. And yeah.
Looking at those beds, one thing that's came up a lot is what are you doing for nutrient cycling in those tunnels? I know you have a section on it in the course, but can you give people a brief overview?
Well, we balance our soils using the Albrecht method, which is the primary thing that I discussed in the course, and that's important to do first. We do use some liquid fertilizer in the winter when the mineralization slows down. Not a lot. We try to prepare before the winter comes, before that happens, by making sure there's enough nitrogen in the soil, just beyond the balancing aspect of it. This little device, we put up the lesson about that in the preview. It's in the preview module. So if you don't have a login to that, you can go to neversinkfarm.com. It's free, and there's a lesson just on that device, which has saved our ass many, many times during the winter.
Here's a question out of Facebook, and I thought we covered this a little bit, but let's take it on because I think this is a big one for a lot of people, and this is Marty's question. in this, in a lot of things, there's talk about profit, working, and he's saying working 12-hour plus days, taking home $12,000 a year is profit, but there's no discussion of the actual gross or net profits. Just, it can be vague, it's very vague, be profitable. And I think we've kind of quantified, like, you're not working 12-hour days. Most of these crops can be profitable depending on where you're at, at 50 to 70% profit margins. So this is one that comes up a lot because people have this image that you can't make money small scale vegetable farming. So I know you've covered it a little bit before, but can you talk about, again, like workload and profitability in making a viable living doing this, and what's actually possible based on your realistic numbers that you've faced?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no way to convince someone who thinks you can't earn a living on farming. Probably, I couldn't convince them. I don't have another job, right? So, and net is really a silly thing. I know people like get so involved in it, but what net is your choice between expanding your farm or taking it home and paying taxes on it. And that choice is really, up to you. We obviously like to reinvest into the farm. And I think that's apparent by, just seeing it. But convincing someone that you can make a living from it is, I don't know. If I love farming, I make a good living from it, and it takes a lot of hard work to get there. But certainly can be done. But, I don't know what else you can say to sort of dispel the myth that we have to be living in poverty. Early on, I wasn't going to wear the badge of poverty. I don't think it's necessary.
Well, a lot of your earlier years were less profitable, I'm assuming, as you started out, as you broke ground when you were doing the homesteading thing, and then you got more systems oriented, more savvy. I mean, what's the difference in, say, the business from when you were homesteading versus now? Like, how is this making a living when that wasn't?
We had to put the hard work in to get good at it and to figure out what works and what doesn't. We didn't have the information that's available to us that we know now, and so we kind of slogged through. Took us a year or two to really figure it out, and then we really just put in the time to make it profitable. The differences are hundreds. It's not one thing. As I always say, it's hundreds and hundreds of little things, and that's why it takes hundreds of small lessons. And the thing about the course is it's loose. It's not me sitting in front of the whiteboard giving a lecture for an hour. We try to split it up into small little spoonfuls to make it accessible or easier to watch. And because it's sort of how the farm grew in small little increments. And so we felt that was important to do into the course. I think I could do one more question, and then I'm going to be in trouble if I don't go back and say.
Earlier, you talked about high-tech crops, and I think that can mean a lot of different things. You could be talking about tomatoes, that you're putting a lot of automation as far as the environment goes, or it could be talking about systems management of technology. But can you talk about what you mean when you talk about high-tech crops and how Neversink implements technology?
Well, I think it's probably better said by high-teching of the crops, right? That it's not really the crop itself. We do have something on advanced growing, which is, some weirder crops like artichokes. But high-teching of them, it's really about using technology and infrastructure to grow them. And that has been central to our growing if we want to grow them off season. And, you know, we start growing tomatoes very, very early, and that's one of the, you know, high-tech ones that high-tech. We tech them out, and, you know, cucumbers and a lot of other things that we grow differently, whether it's grafting them. They may be a normal vegetable, but you can really get high-tech with them to get them early and productive. That's usually what I mean by it. I want to thank everybody for coming to this and watching. As I said, we have a lot of new videos in the preview. So if you're a member, then just go over and you can check the preview. If you're not, at neversinkfarm.com, you can just register. All you need is a name and the email, and you just, you know, instantly register into the course, and you can go and check it out and watch those, watch the lessons we put in there. And yeah, so I think membership enrollment is going to end tomorrow in the evening. So yeah, that's that. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look. And I just, you know, I had promised a crop we're growing in the winter that's been really successful. So I'm going to have a look at it. We've been growing celery all winter, and we do it as a cut and come again crop. And it has been, let me turn the camera on, and it's been really great. And so next winter we're going into full production with it. I think it's kind of a new crop to be growing in New York in the winter. It takes a little special attention, but it's really profitable per square foot and really popular item. All right, so, hey man, Diego, awesome webinar.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for giving us you know, an inside look at the market stream, the reality of it, and what's going into the farm. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, man, you too. I really appreciate it. And this was, you know, Diego's idea, and it was a fantastic idea. Yeah, and I hope we can do some more soon.